Hello and welcome to the 10th and maybe last episode of
We made it 10 episodes!
I know, we're going to celebrate by talking about sports because sports is all we're good for. 10th episode of Full Court Press. My name is Chris Murphy and to my right is Colton Poole.
Hello.
We are sports reporters for the Forum and like I said, we're going to report on sports. So first we're going to start off with the Dakota Bowl, which is on Friday at the Fargo Dome. Lots of state championship football. Colton went 5 for 8 in his picks last week. He was 15 for 22 during the playoffs so far.
That's a winning percentage.
No, you're bad. And yeah, you got Langdon, Shiloh Christian, and Century wrong last week. Good job.
Thanks for reminding me.
So yeah, we'll start off with 9-man. We got Wyndmere Lidgerwood versus Shiloh Christian. Colton, go.
Region 1, number 1 seed, Wyndmere Lidgerwood versus Region 5, number 2 seed, Shiloh Christian. Teams from kind of two different sides of the state. Wyndmere Lidgerwood, they defeated Cavalier in a really tight game, 36-34 at Cavalier. Cavalier was number 1 in the QRF this season. Wyndmere, in that game, they were led by Wyatt Harless, quarterback. He went 20 of 34, passing for 261 yards and 5 touchdowns. And he connected with 4 different receivers on those touchdowns. And Wyndmere, they're number 3 in the QRF this year. They've had a really incredible season. For the year, Harless is 78 of 114 for 1,348 yards and 16 touchdowns. Hunter Churchill leads them in rushing with 76 carries for 481 yards and 7 touchdowns. And yeah, they're just on a roll right now. And on the other side of the bracket, Bismarck Shiloh Christian, I picked New Salem to beat Shiloh Christian because those teams were both from Region 5. New Salem Glen Ellyn beat Shiloh Christian earlier in the regular season, but Shiloh Christian, they turned it around at New Salem, of all places. And they won 35-30. So now they're in the championship. They're number 4 in the QRF. And in that win, Shiloh Christian outrushed New Salem 335-167. But Shiloh Christian led up 282 passing yards to Evan Hinkey. I'll tell you why that's important in a sec. Shiloh Christian's Kanan Fagerlin ran 48 times for 297 yards. And NDSU recruit Bartholomew Agbu caught 2 passes for 51 yards. He leads the team with 56 tackles. Murphy, Agbu, you got a chance to interview him. Do you want to tell me a little bit about the story that you did?
I did a story on Oak Grove Jr. Joseph Akiri. He and Agbu are actually best friends. They grew up together in Nigeria. And the story is from Akiri's point of view. On April 14th, 2014, a bomb went off at a crowded bus station less than 2 miles from his home. Classmates and neighbors of Akiri were among the 88 dead and 200 injured. And that's when Ogbu and his family decided they wanted to get him to the United States. And Akiri's dad actually helped pay for Ogbu to get to the States by loaning the family money to get a travel visa. And Ogbu ended up coming over here, going to Bismarck. It was the first time he saw snow. And then 7 months after that, Akiri's father died. And Ogbu and Akiri talked on the phone, cried on the phone together about Akiri's dad dying and what that means generally. If you're not the oldest in the family and, the father dies, then you have to go make money for the family. So Akiri had to go to the streets and make money any way he could, cleaning places and stuff like that. Sometimes he'd come home with nothing. Sometimes he'd come home with money. And that was basically going to be his life for the rest of his life. If Ogbu didn't talk to current superintendent of Central Cass, Morgan Fornes, who was housing Ogbu at the time, and Ogbu helped Akiri get over here via Fornes. So it's just a crazy story that they ended up together, best friends in Nigeria, and yeah, that's his backstory.
And so kind of, definitely interesting insight there, but going back to the 9-man championship game, Wyndmere Lidgerwood, I think they've passed so well this season. I mentioned Harless and the performance that he's had in the playoffs now. And Shiloh Christian, they've kind of proven to be vulnerable on the pass, on passing defense. I'll take Weinmere, who has scored 43.5 points per game and allowed 14.5, over Shiloh Christian, who allows 19.7 points per game. I'll take Weinmere 34-22.
So after that heart-wrenching story, you're going to have Ogbu losing the state championship.
I was hoping you would notice.
Also, the crazy part, which I also forgot to mention, was Ogbu and Akiri. Well, Akiri plays football for Oak Grove. Ogbu and Akiri came over to the States having never played football in their life. And now one of them is going to North Dakota State. One of them is going to get his college paid for to play football. And the other had a very good junior season, so he could be back his senior year. And he wants to be an engineer, I believe Akiri wants to. So yeah, that's a crazy story. Just life is very weird. That's my synopsis. And then anyway, all right. So we move on to the 1A playoffs. We got Hillsborough, Central Valley, and Langdon area.
Hillsborough Central Valley, I kind of predicted it would be a defensive game in the semifinals. They beat Dickinson Trinity 34-0.
Well, there was defense on one side.
Right.
Defense did exist.
Right, exactly. So Grant Skager, he's been rushing really well all year. He had 245 rushing yards on 32 carries and 3 touchdowns. The Burros racked up 354 yards and scored 34 points. And the Titans, Trinity, they had entered the game allowing less than 3 points per game. And Hillsborough offense was just on an absolute tear.
Is it got to be Burros and Warbirds for the 2 best names that are at the Dakota Bowl?
I like Burros a lot.
That's a quality name.
Magicians for mine.
Ooh.
Yeah, that's pretty good too.
That could be ball game. Okay, I'm sorry.
Anyway, so Grant Skager, this year he has 2,133 yards and 29 touchdowns on 241 carries. The Burros are led by Ryan Trogruben.
Ooh.
With
well done.
782 yards and 10 touchdowns through the air. And Carson Henningsgaard, he has 12 catches for 296 yards and 3 touchdowns so far this year. Jack Camrud leads the defense with 55 total tackles. And yeah, I mean, Hillsborough is on an absolute roll right now. They have allowed, looks like a combined 15 points in 3 playoff games this year. So their defense is doing really well. And then on the other side of the bracket, this is one of the games I got wrong. Langdon area, Edmore Munich. They were the number 3 seed. They defeated Velva 20-0 at Velva in the semifinals. Langdon's defense, they're another one that's performing really well this year. That was their 6th shutout of the season. In that game, Jacob Delvo had 2 rushing touchdowns as well as a passing touchdown. This year, he's been 119 of 189 for 2,001 yards and 27 touchdowns through the air. Chase Pebbles leads the rushing attack there with 81 carries for 797 yards and 13 touchdowns. And yeah, the Langdon, really good performance against a Velva team that was on a roll there. So good defensive performance. Langdon, they average 42.3 points per game and allow 5.3. Hillsborough, they've scored 39.2 points per game and allows 4.8 points per game. So very slightly better defense, but it's marginal. However, so both defenses have been stout, but I think Hillsborough winning against Trinity, who was so good on defense throughout the season. Hillsborough has proven to beat good defenses and can put up points on good defenses. I'll take Hillsborough 22-7.
What do you got in the 2A championship game for Fargo Shanley and Bismarck St. Mary's?
So Fargo Shanley, they beat Watford City, correct, Murphy?
17-6, yep.
Yeah, you were at that game.
I covered that game.
Tell me about that game.
That game wasn't as close as, or wasn't, yeah, that game wasn't as close as the score would say. Shanley had controlled the entire game. They had one mistake that was a fumble in the end zone that Watford City jumped on. But there was no point where you really thought Watford City was in it. The one thing I will say, which is, would be tough for Shanley is Jay Cava. He came up limping He came up limping in the third quarter and didn't go in on offense, which really hurt their offense. That really hurt their offensive scheme, just not having him in there. Especially in the cold. Well, see, they'll be in the dome, so they'll be fine. But in the cold weather, it was tough because they couldn't do a spread, or they had to go to a spread. They weren't. Nobody was afraid of them running. And Kava still played linebacker, but there's no way he's not going to play on both sides. Just talking to him, he just felt like he had an MCL sprain against St. Mary's the last time they met. He missed the previous 3 games, and he just felt like he got a bruise from the brace. But they held him out just because, like I said, there was just it just never felt like Watford City was in it. So if Kava, who just got an offer from Minnesota State Moorhead to play football, by the way, if Kava's healthy, yeah, Shanley should be fine.
I think Kava would be heck of a find for MSUN.
Oh, yeah, he would be. He's
built and
great
very
size,
athletic.
Yeah, and great size, great head on his shoulders. Yeah, he's solid. He's a solid football player.
Heck of a
God, there's so many
basketball player,
cliches in one sentence. Oh my God, it's like John Gruden.
So for Shanley, Cade Busick leads the Deacons.
He was very solid against Watford City.
And I believe he was a replacement quarterback for their injured quarterback earlier in the season, and he's performed really well.
Caden Kuhneman came in towards the end and was playing quarterback. So I don't know if he didn't.
Really?
He was struggling. He was definitely struggling, you could tell. But then again, he didn't have Kava to throw to, so you don't know.
Sure.
But he came in the second half late for some reason to play quarterback, and Busick was playing running back. So I don't know if Shanley just threw that in as a wrinkle to make sure, St. Mary's has to prepare for that when they see the tape. But yeah, he was in.
Okay, so we could see a two-headed monster at quarterback. Who knows?
Yeah, that's the thing.
But Busick leads Shanley. He's completed 64 of 116 passes for 1,047 yards and 13 touchdowns and 0 interceptions. And Kuhneman, he has 542 yards and 5 touchdowns on 1 interception. Cam Seville leads the team in receiving. He has 393 yards on 18 catches for 7 touchdowns. Kava, he has 278 yards on 17 catches for 5 touchdowns. And then rushing, looks like Busick leads the team with 595 yards and 8 touchdowns. So a really balanced offense, I'd say. We've covered a couple Shanley games now, and they can do a lot of different things offensively. As for Bismarck St. Mary's, by the way, got both of these games right. I think it's fair to say that this was the game where kind of everyone saw this coming, was Shanley and St. Mary's meeting in the championship. So, St. Mary's, they beat Devils Lake, number 3 seed Devils Lake, 30-0 at home. St. Mary's outrushed Devils Lake 242-135. Jonah Krebs led St. Mary's with 152 yards and 2 touchdowns on 17 carries. And Cole Bendrew threw for 122 yards on 10 of 15 passes and to go with 2 rushing touchdowns. And, yeah, so St. Mary's, Krebs, he has 87 carries for 752 yards and 9 touchdowns. And Gendrew, he has 103 completions for 165 passes for 1,451 yards and 16 touchdowns. Luke Cambeets, he has 46 catches for 685 yards and 8 touchdowns. Joseph Richter has leads the defense with 79 total tackles. I got a chance to talk to Troy Mattern, the head coach, yesterday for Shanley, and he kind of mentioned how. So St. Mary's and Shanley, they played, or in the regular season, Shanley beat them 17-14. But Mattern thinks that these are going to be 2 completely different teams. They're both dealing with injuries, and they've both kind of evolved as the season has gone on. So he would throw out the first game kind of out the window, trying to figure out who's going to win. But I still like Shanley considering their offensive balance, and they beat St. Mary's at St. Mary's in the regular season. Shanley has scored 33.9 points to 6.9 points per game, and St. Mary's has scored 33 points per game to 8.5. So slightly better offense and defense for Shanley. I'll take Shanley basically the same result, 17-14.
Okay. And last but not least, we got in 3A, West Fargo and Minot.
Minot, I got that pick wrong, and I think not many people would fault me for it except those living in Minot. Bismarck Century, 2-time defending state champs, and they were on such a roll after losing against Cheyenne in the regular season opener. But Minot just, a lot of coaches have said that if Minot had played a little better, that Minot could have easily won the West Region like Century did. And, I mean, Minot looked like the team that could have done that. Minot outrushed Century 237-48. Not even close there. Minot Still and Danielson ran 24 times for 94 yards. And Adrian Davis Aguilar had a 68-yard winning touchdown run in the third quarter. But really surprising that Creighton Rudolph, their leading passer, was limited to 4 completions on 11 passes for 30 yards. But if you're running like Minot was, you don't really need to pass that much. And then on the other side, West Fargo beat Bismarck 29-22. Really interesting game. So going into that game, you're West Fargo. You had lost in the semifinals at home the past 2 seasons. And West Fargo just looked like a team that they hadn't been all year. They were kind of making offensive mistakes. They get stuffed in the red zone. And Bismarck, the team that they were playing, the number 2 seed out of the West, they were winning at halftime and that was West Fargo's first time ever this season trailing at half. And the West Fargo just like a team that had jitters, a team that maybe was a little cold. The weather was affecting the game. But Jay Gibson, the head coach for West Fargo, he told the team just kind of like, if you're losing as the number 1 seed, heavily favored team, and you go into halftime and you're losing, it would be easy to be angry. It would be easy to get fired up. But Gibson just said, guys, like, relax, have fun. That's when you're at your best, is when you're having fun and, you're just kind of letting things loose. And West Fargo just came out the gates and scored 22 points in the second half, and just kind of showed everyone the offense that they were throughout the season. Andy Gravdahl, he finished the game 19 of 32 through the air for 242 yards and a touchdown to go with a rushing touchdown in the first half. But now looking at West Fargo versus Minot, earlier in the season opener, West Fargo played at Minot and won 36-20. In that game, the Packers outscored the Magicians 20-6 in the second half. Like they did in the semifinals against Bismarck, they were really a second-half team. And that was probably the only 2 times that West Fargo has been really tested in the second half. Otherwise, Gravdahl and the West Fargo starters has been pulled in the second half due to blowouts. So West Fargo has totaled against Minot totaled 356 yards of offense to Minot's 233. Gravdahl had a decent day. He had 169 yards and 2 touchdowns with 2 interceptions, and rushed for 66 yards on 9 carries and a touchdown. The Packers held Minot's leading rusher Brett Davis to 57 yards on 18 carries, but he had 2 touchdowns. Rudolph, so he's passed for 1,734 yards on 93 for 47 passing this season. He completed 12 of 18 passes for 114 yards and a touchdown in that game. Peyton Lamoureux, leading receiver, he had 4 catches for 32 yards. He has 867 yards this year. Jared Franick, he had a pair of touchdowns, and he racked up 15 tackles in that game against Minot. Whopping tackle total.
That is a whopping tackle total.
Say that 10 times fast.
No.
Okay. Whopping tackle total. No, I can't
Please,
do it.
God, stop.
And then Minot, they're on an absolute tear. They beat Cheyenne 66-37 in the quarterfinals and have outscored opponents 161-100 this year, while the Packers have outscored teams 441-104. So in West Fargo, 40.1 points per game and allowed 9.5 points per game. And I'm willing to bet a lot of those are in the second half when the second stringers are out there. Minot scores 33.4 points per game and allows 20.9. So Minot's defense has kind of proven to be a little bit vulnerable. Obviously, their offense has caught up to the defense this season, but I think in the Fargo Dome, West Fargo's offense is so reliant on passing. I think being in a dome, being inside helps a ton, and a little bit of kind of home field advantage. West Fargo is going to have a lot of home fans there, so I'll take West Fargo winning their first state title since 2003, 42-21. Now, let's move on now that we've got the Dakota Bowl out of the way. Murphy, I think you want to talk about some Minnesota State cross country.
Yes, I have some Minnesota stuff to report. So first of all, the Perham Yellow Jackets, they won both the boys and girls state cross country titles on Saturday. That was only the third time that's ever happened in Class 1A history. Last season, the girls were defeated by 2 points, and the boys were defeated by 7. So they both, and in Perham, they say that that's defeated when really they finished in second by 2 points in the state, and they finished in second by 7 points in the state. But for Perham people, or for Perham runners, they always expect to win, and they won. The boys won by 1, which is insane in cross country. They won by 1 point, and the girls won by 30. And the craziest part about the whole thing was neither team had anybody in the top 10 of either race, but they were just solid teams. So
imagine all the things that have to go right, like the runners
to finish one,
barely outsprint another.
Right.
That's one.
They finished by 1 point.
That is insane.
So there you go, Perham.
And now moving on to Minnesota volleyball.
We got
Christopher.
We got state volleyball. Yes. So Ada Borup was a 5 seed in Section 8A. Moorhead was a 3 seed in Section 8 AAA, and both are going to state. They both ended up winning. Wadena Deer Creek did what they've been doing all season. They won 6A, losing 1 set in the 4 matches the entire time. Wadena Deer Creek gets the 4 seed and will play 5 seed Ada at the Xcel Energy Center in St. Paul at 1 p.m. On Thursday in the state quarterfinals. Wadena is 25-6 on the season, but one of their losses is to Ada Borup, 2-0 in a tournament on October 20th. So that first match could be big. Obviously it's big. It's the state quarterfinals. So it'll be interesting. And then Moorhead won a 5-set thriller over Wilmer to head to state for the 3rd straight season. It's their 4th section title in the last 5 years. They were up 2-0. They lost the next 2, but then they rolled in the 5th set. So Moorhead gets they will face, they're unseeded. They will face 3-seeded Champlain Park at 11 a.m. on Thursday.
And as we always do when we interview people, last thing, is there anything else you'd like to add? We should almost make this a segment.
Yeah, okay. Well, this is unfortunate. The Breckenridge Wahpeton boys hockey coach, Ryan Brewer, died last Sunday. He was 33. He had 2 sons and a fiance. How he died is not completely known yet. But at his funeral on Saturday, which I thought was equally tragic and heart-wrenching as it was kind of beautiful, his hockey players, before the funeral was ended, they lined up outside the doors, and they had their hockey jerseys on. They all grabbed a stick, and as his casket was brought by him, they did a stick tap. They tapped their sticks on the ground, which, for people who don't know what a stick tap is, that's basically how hockey players clap when they're in a game. They hit the stick against the ice, and that's basically a sign of respect. And yeah, that's what they did for him, and it was heart-wrenching. There's actually a video of it that somebody took of it, and yeah, it was heart-wrenching. But at the same time, it was beautiful, and that's kind of sums up life, and is a terrible way to end this podcast. But
no,
there it is.
Great showing that sports, how important sports are to people, and how you can find
there's more than just a scoreboard.
Absolutely, and you can find some sort of
and this is
solace.
This is the same team in a 4-month span that they have lost their 33-year-old coach, and their teammate Carter Casey died of a rare form of cancer at the age of 17. So the Breckenridge Wahpeton boys hockey team has been through a lot in the last bunch of months. So
you can only hope that they kind of come together through all of it.
Yeah, that's what they'll do.
All right, so this has been Full Court Press with Forum Sports reporters Colton Poole, myself, and Chris Murphy. And thanks for listening.
Thank you.